وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا. الترمذي وأبو داود والنسائي بسند صحيح عند الترمذي عن علي رضي الله تعالى عنه وارضاه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله وتر يحب الوتر فأوتروا يا أهل القرآن. Today's hadith, I picked this hadith because last week when I spoke about regular sunan, the regular optional prayers, one of the brothers came to me and he said this is good, but where does witr, the prayer that we pray at the end of the day, at night, at the end of the day, where does that fit within the sunnah? And I was like, okay, this is going to be the subject of my next Khatera, inshallah. So this hadith is one of the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ encourages people to perform the witr, Salatul Witr. And most of us know what it is, but we'll talk about it a little bit. So here he's saying, the Prophet ﷺ saying, Inna Allahu watr. And it doesn't really translate, except that the Prophet in this hadith is reminding you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. Because the word watr or witr in Arabic, it means an odd number, right? You have shaf' and watr, right? We hear that, and shaf' it means double, it means even numbers, and watr it means an odd number. So here, I don't want to translate it literally like that, but I want to say that the Prophet ﷺ is saying, reminding you that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is witr, He's one. Therefore, He likes for us to always be reminded of this. So therefore, there are salawat like that you do, like witr, you do 3 at the end of the day. You end your day with this meaning. And he says, يُحِبُّ الْوِتْرِ. He loves this. He loves this fact. فَأَوْتِرُوا يَا أَهْلَ الْقُرْآنِ. That perform the witr, those who read the Quran. And of course, the witr is not only for those who read Quran, it's for everyone. But we'll talk about witr. Number one, there is a difference in how scholars view Salatul Witr. So there is mainly 2 schools of thought. Most scholars, they consider it as one of the high regular sunan al-mu'akkad. The Prophet ﷺ performed it and the Sahaba did. They never really left it. They never really skipped it. They always did that. So therefore, it's considered as sunnah mu'akkada. At the end of the day, you do an odd number of and we'll talk about the number of raka'at that you perform with Salatul Witr and what's the best, etc. So this is what they. I don't want to go into the details of all the madhahib and all that, but there's 2 general thoughts, right? So this is sunnah mu'akkada. Now, there is a distinction, and I don't want to make it too technical, but there is a distinction between wajib, which is the obligation, the prayer, the 5 prayers that we have, and between the sunnah, the optional prayer, all the other prayers, right? So when you mention wajib, it means it's an obligation. This is the prayers that we know that you have to perform, and if you miss it, you have to make it up, and you have to believe that's an obligation, etc. So this is with everyone, with the majority of scholars. There's a difference. Those who lived in a community where people follow the Hanafi madhab, they might have a little bit different understanding. And this is the person who asked me. He said, we hear this wajib. You have to understand that for Hanafi, in the Hanafi madhab, the word wajib doesn't mean an obligation. It's the same term, but has a different meaning. With Shafi'i and Maliki and Hanbali, all the other scholars, wajib means it's an obligation. Wajib and fard, it means an obligation. They're synonymous terms. For Hanafi, those who grew up in an environment where they follow the Hanafi madhab in Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, all these places, they make a distinction between fard, which is an absolute obligation, and between wajib, which is a practical obligation. Call it that. And witr falls under that, which is a level between sunnah mu'akkadat, between a regular sunnah, a regular optional act of worship, and an obligation. It falls right in between. And the reason why they look at it that way is because they can't say it's an obligation. They can't say it's a prayer number 6. They just can't. But also, the Prophet ﷺ never left it, and it's so encouraged that it's very close to being an obligation. So what do you understand from that? At the end of the day, from a practice standpoint, it's the same. You might say, well, okay, what do I do? From a practice standpoint, you don't have to believe it's an obligation, but you treat it as such. That's what you do. So, right? Because it's an order from the Prophet ﷺ to do it, right? So you don't have to believe it's an obligation because it's not, but as a practical obligation. So you see, people always do it. They never really always do Isha, because the Prophet ﷺ in a different hadith says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ زَادَكُمْ صَلَاةً, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has added another salah. أَلَا وَهِيَ الْوِتْرِ فَصَلُّوهَا بَيْنَ الْعِشَاءِ وَالْفَجْرِ. It's a witr, so pray between Isha and Fajr, that's the time. It's the same time as Salat al-Isha. So I hope this was clear from that standpoint. Because the brother who asked me, he said, we hear this wajib, and I know his background, I know where he's coming from. So if you hear someone says witr is wajib, this is what they mean. They mean a practical obligation. They don't mean, you don't have to believe it's a sixth prayer, but it's from a practical standpoint, they do it all the time. Almost, it's like an obligation. So what is the best number to what, like, sometimes in Ramadan we do 2, and we do salam and do 1. And you can do it that way. There's different ways to do it. There's different hadith, different narrations on how to do it. Again, Hanafis, the way they do it, they pray it like Maghrib. And they do qunut. I'm not going to sit and go through the steps, but if you do it that way, you keep doing it that way. That's your way of doing it. There's another way to do it where you do 2, and they do salam and do 1. Now, the same way we do it in Taraweeh in Ramadan, and there's no qunut, there's no dua in it except in Ramadan, for certain scholars. The Prophet ﷺ always prayed at the end of the day an odd number of rak'at. He would do 3, 5, 7, 9, always like that. And it's part of Salat al-Layl. So if you do those, if you pray, right now you prayed Isha, and you go home and you do 3, it's considered as part of Salat al-Layl, part of Qiyam. So it's that's how important witr is. It's considered as, we have the 5 obligatory prayers, we have witr, and everything else comes after, subhanAllah. So I would like to remind myself to continue doing it, and encourage everyone else, and also remind my younger brothers and sisters to if you're not in the habit, get into the habit of doing it, never leave it, because it is considered as a practical obligation. جزاكم الله خير. I hope this was of benefit. يروي الإمام الترمذي وأبو داود والنسائي بسند صحيح عن علي رضي الله تعالى عنه وارضاه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله وتر يحب الوتر فأوتروا يا أهل القرآن. صدق رسول الله صلى الله